special meeting of the Bucksport Town Council for Tuesday, August the 27th to order. This meeting is being held in person. It can also be viewed on local cable channel 1303, excuse me, or on the internet by accessing bucksportmaine.gov and selecting agendas and minutes and choosing this meeting and clicking on the video button next to the meeting. Questions or comments may be submitted during the meeting by emailing slassard@bucksportmaine.gov or during the meeting by calling 307-8030. George, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Mark Eastman.
Here.
Councilor Paul Goff.
Here.
Councilor Tracy Hare.
Here.
Mayor Paul Bissonnette.
Here.
Councilor Dan Ormsley.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Steve Bishop.
Here.
Councilor Ed Rankin.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Next is ordinances to consider or introduce. We have two. The first is to adopt an emergency ordinance establishing a moratorium on the transfer, abandonment, removal, or unregulated release of impounded water or dams.
The purpose of this moratorium is to allow the council sufficient time to develop a local ordinance that addresses the issues not currently covered in state law in terms of the abandonment or transfer of ownership of a dam, which are issues related to public safety, economic impact to a community and a region. Discussions with our attorney indicated that this is not an attempt to change state law or to alter Title 38, which governs the environmental piece with the regulation of dams. This is entirely about local standards of review that need to be considered in order to protect the lives and property and economics of our region. So the first step, if you decide to do this, would be adopting the moratorium. And the second step would be the development of an ordinance that allows you to to have a process for any dam owner who chooses to transfer, abandon, et cetera, a local process that includes the type of information that the community would need in order to make a rational decision about whether or not it could take ownership, or some other entity, or if there were contractual or legal liabilities that prevented the transfer at all. So this hasn't been done before, this type of ordinance. Our attorney has looked for preemption issues and finds nothing specific. This first draft of the ordinance, there are a couple of additional changes that would be in the second reading, including a specific reference to the fact that this does not in any way change or attempt to modify the Title 38 statute that's the state statute of it, because it's a different set of information that we're looking for. The moratorium is for Silver Lake because that's where this is. Our 5-town committee met today. Orland would be the other community if it chooses to, that would, of the 5 towns, be able to do something similar. That's an in process. You know, they have their meetings to do that, but this moratorium is for time, and to the best of my knowledge, we have not been served. There's nothing out there that would prevent us from adopting this, and not in a foot-dragging way, but to get an ordinance reviewed and adopted in a timely manner so that it is available. If or when an owner of a dam should decide that it wants to divest itself of ownership. Happy to answer any questions. Like I said, this is a different approach, but it is a proactive approach to try and address the protection of the community, both from a public safety viewpoint and from an economic water supply, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Type.
Any questions from the council?
Just a comment. I
Please.
like how it covers the financial capacity of a potential buyer. I think that's really important.
We've had examples of offers to perhaps entities that would not have had the fiscal capacity to have done any sort of maintenance or management of any of these dams. So the inclusion of that is a direct result of not a what if, it's an example of what did.
Right.
So
Anyone else on the council? Public?
The going forward with the ordinance, I've been reading in the papers about the AIM and the DEP. Will this open more of a window for them to respond, or is this totally the DEP does their thing with their window that they have to respond to, and this will just be as you just explained?
Right now, there's nothing in front of the DEP from AIM or Bucksport Mill. Their initial petition that was submitted was returned by the DEP, and they were given until August 11th to provide additional information and more notifications, and that did not happen. So when they go back to the DEP, they start over again. This would be a separate process from the DEP. This has got nothing to do with the application they do to the department. The town would still have to meet the obligations under that statute, but this would also be in place.
Okay. And I read through a lot of this online, tried to do a little bit of homework, and bear with me if I ask I'm just kind of ramping back up, but it seems that it is all about legal agreements. So when the 5 towns meet in this committee, are they looking at the agreement for drinking water through Maine Water? Are they looking at any agreement with dam safety for the state of Maine? The fish hatchery here in Orland kind of jumped off the page at me. I was reading earlier today that this is a national fish hatchery. It's the second oldest operating hatchery in the country right now, dating back to 1889. It's under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which then goes up to the U.S. Department of the Interior. So it kind of left me like, they're messing with the feds. Why haven't we seen anything come about from the feds on this, where it could have an impact on them, back to our drinking water, et cetera. So I'm just trying to get a handle what the committee is. Are they just at the surface starting to dig down, or are they way into this now?
The committee is doing all of the above. In terms of the first meeting was sort of, do we all want to play together on this? Are we gonna, do we think it's the most valuable to have the communities united on this topic? And the answer was yes. And Then the next one was, what are our priority system? The third one, which was today, discussed the introduction of this moratorium ordinance possibility to part of the group, and the establishment of a list of resource entities that we will be reaching out to come to the committee to assist,
Yeah.
which are places like Great Pond Mountain Conservation Trust and Denny's Salmon Federation and JIRA and Maine Water, the people that have resources and knowledge that can assist
This
with
thing
that.
about dam safety for the state of Maine, I don't know if I'm making this up, or is there such a group in the state for, that you know?
MEMA oversees
Okay.
that. We have done tabletop exercises about Silver Lake many years ago,
Okay,
not recently.
gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
To kind of answer Paul's question about the fish hatchery,
Yeah.
they're not getting involved because generally they tear dams down. That's what their department does.
That's the current policy of that
Didn't realize that.
IF&W kind of is that getting rid of dams is so they're not gonna weigh in on this. Doesn't mean that they won't ever provide information, but it means they're not taking any public position on this at this time.
Ralph Chapman, a quick question. Is it your view that this local ordinance will satisfy the problems that you had outlined earlier with the state law? In other words, does the state law still need to be fixed?
In my estimation, the state law is still deficient in terms of the type of information that it requires, even for the fact that it's an environmental regulation, the fact that it has no standards in it for the requirement of information that would allow their process to work, which is a buyer or an eligible entity. Even though that those items may not be environmental, no organization could make a decision without the information. So them not being able to require it, I see as something that needs correction. And the second thing is what Councilor Hare mentioned, which is financial capacity.
Thank you.
Ralph, I also would say that, I mentioned this to the town manager before this meeting when she and I were talking, that I think when the legislature convenes at the beginning of the year, there's a number of ways to take a look at this, but it could provide an impetus, or at least something needs to be done with the legislation that's on the books now, because communities such as Bucksport and others are having to draft their own, or having to look at this type of thing in order to fill the gaps. So,
Since you've mentioned that, and since I have been in the legislature in the past, I'm more than happy to help with an understanding of how to work with a legislative schedule, which is not yet determined, but one can guess roughly what it will look like. And so my simple advice is the time to start drafting the legislation that you would like to see is now. This is the best time to do it. And I have seen legislation passed in the first couple of weeks of, the legislature starts the first Wednesday of December, according to the state constitution, and I have seen legislation pushed through that was very timely, needed to be done quickly, and if there's sufficient cooperation amongst the entities of the legislature and the governor's office, it could be put into law within a couple of weeks.
that's good advisement. Thank you. Anyone else?
White, Bucksport. There's one dam in the town of Bucksport this pertains to, is that correct?
That's correct.
What do we know about the current shape of that dam?
The last report we have, I believe was from 2021 on, that was issued by that. That's part of the problem, is that we don't have sufficient information about its care and maintenance, its current information, or any of those kind of things.
And nor was that provided to the DEP in their initial filing.
So we don't really know what the condition of the dam is at this point? There's been no...
The last inspection report that was done indicates that while it's a high-risk dam, of the 3 dams, its condition is not poor. It's not rated as poor or inadequate.
Silver Lake Dam is the one with the most recent upgrades, correct?
That's correct.
Is there any income from that dam?
There isn't income from the dam. If the deeds are correct between Bucksport Mill LLC and Jura, and formerly Whole Oceans, there were contractual payments for water to Bucksport Mill LLC required as part of the agreements that were in place. Whole Oceans is no longer party to those agreements. Jura is, and still purchases water from, but do I know the exact amount? No, I don't.
Given that what I heard just through the is that there was an incomplete attempt to file for an abandonment of that dam. Is that correct?
Yes, it was filed, it was returned, a date for the rest of the information was given, it was not provided.
But the intent by AIM, or whoever owns it, American Iron and Metal, was to begin a process of abandonment. Is that true?
That is not the technical term that's used anymore. They got rid of that in state statute, but that is the
Kind of.
that is the
in
end
layman's
result of the
term,
process.
in son of a.
Yeah.
Okay. What currently protects, if the town does nothing, what currently protects from that so-called leaving the dam as it is at this point? What current protection are there? If an entity, if American Iron and Metal wants to walk away, what protection are we given at this point?
Title 38 in the law that talks about notification in the petition.
And the town, this appears to me to be a kick upstairs for this, right? It's a more protection for the town, is that correct?
This is entirely about protecting the public safety and economic interests of this community.
Thank you, I hope it happens.
Anyone else? Name, since we've discussed. Any questions? Alright. How would the council like to proceed?
Motion to approve.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next would be the first reading of the Town of Bucksport Dam Transfer, Abandonment, Removal, or Unregulated Release of Impounded Waters Ordinance. How would the council like to proceed? Second. Questions? Do you have anything you want to?
Well, just that there will be some
The changes.
Yep.
technical things and the addition of, just to ensure that there's no thought or supposition that this is intended to do anything to Title 38. This is entirely a public safety, local related ordinance, and the calls that I've gotten who have said DEP, it's a separate process. I can't change state law, but communities have home rule authority to do things that can protect their communities, and that's exactly what we're doing.
So essentially, they're beholden to both entities.
We did a similar thing with a waste facility licensing ordinance fairly recently.
Both and.
Do we have the motion yet?
Yes.
I have a motion, so that's right. Yep.
Second.
All's in favor? Thank you. If there's nothing else, the next item on the agenda is adjournment. Motion. Moved. Second. In a second. All's in favor? Opposed? Thank you, everyone.